There's a point to it, and Bill is and so I'm going to turn it over to him.
I'm there.
And he's got some things to share with us. Bill Banfield, the endowed chair in the music department.
I'm more interested in this dialogue, the way you set it up. I have all kinds of things. We all have a bunch of things we want to say because it is so richly textured. So I'm going to do what the hip-hop first talk about when they talk about freestyle.
There we go.
So I hope my experience as an educator and a musician will kick in, and so that I do have some consistency here and some coherence to my, and I don't ramble too much. But let's start with the blues, because it's very interesting. You're absolutely right. The blues and jazz become an expressive and philosophical paradigm for where he's going with this, okay? And the blues is not the blues story. It is cathartic in that it allows me to illuminate that which gives me the pain as a cathartic moment to jump over it. So when you hear the blues, it's just not all sad. It's actually, blues music in the South is actually like what party music is to us. When folks got together and hit the jukebox and played the dance music, it was a blues, but it was a jump blues, okay? Because it allowed you to, okay, yo devil, I have identified you. You are not my issue anymore. And so that becomes both the kind of a philosophical thing and that he uses throughout. He says that if I can first illuminate using 1,369 lights, then I will then clearly see the demons that are around me. And that's the blues. That's what the blues does. That's the function of the blues, to illuminate and eliminate the devil in your life. And so what people talk about is that, let's talk about the concrete now. What's important to talk about is most definitely and primarily that Ralph Ellison is a black American. And with the notion of black American, that should also mean his cultural understanding, but also his national understanding. And being national means that I'm engaging with a society that's made up of many parts and many experiences. He is also essentially a race man, which is that he is someone who's very, very influenced by the writings of the New Negro and Alain Locke, which believe in the whole notion of upward mobility for black folk, okay? And that example can be made in all kinds of ways. So you see him struggling with, you know, I don't even want to go see these country folk out who maybe have problematic practices because we're supposed to keep our distance. So that there is a very interesting complexity to black life, which black folk ain't all the same thing. That's the other important thing about Ralph Ellison and all of these writers. They've been called upon to show the complexity of black life. So when you talk about black, black is a color that's inclusive of lots of colors. It's not a single primary color. And when you talk about it in that regard philosophically, then I think we come back full circle to what all of our panelists have said and many of you have said, which is this is both about a concrete narrative of one person trying to find identity, but it's so concrete that it becomes universal. So that I can see my struggles in Ralph Ellison, even though none of us are born in those times, but there is a universal thing there as well as a concrete thing. And I think that all of these writers that come to this situation, and they use the narrative, they use blues, they use poetry, they use dance to somehow comment on the complexity, and art allows you to do that. It really, really does, because it transcends as well. So in terms of bravo to the English department for and actually hitting on all those things, the importance, and now this was a great American literature piece as well. And it is both, I think if I was studying culture, I'd want to know what the people who wrote the book valued. So it's important to black folk too, because every literate black person, every artist, every scholar, every person who read, they say, man, have you read Invisible Man? Oh man, Invisible Man is the bomb, okay? So I think if you had to go out and call your grandmother and uncles who say, so you know, one thing that we did learn about is that if there is one book that most of the intelligentsia, whether you're talking about Toni Morrison or Cornel West or anybody from 1950 on, talks about the importance of this book as a literary piece in American culture, but also that it's also a real roadmap for how to kick basically America. He gives you very clear instructions. And what I like about it, how to kick the racism and the hatred out of America. He has a dream, actually, that he says, you know, if there was one thing that I would want, Ellison says, and he says this actually in the preface, he says, so my task, from the preface, from the 1981 preface, says that my task was one of revealing the human universals hidden within the plight of one who is black and American, right? Conveying my personal vision of possibility, which all of our panelists talked about, this notion of hope. Then in fact, that if people read this book, they would see a particular condition, but they would also see a universal condition, and they would also allow the book to critique, and that's the other thing that the book does. The book does critique the problems in American society, which is very rich. Now, I have one more quote. I've probably talked over my time, right? This is my favorite quote. Page 153. I think this is cool for everybody. Page 153. Okay. You ever see those big evangelical sessions? Open your books and turn your Bibles a page. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is the last one. My best quote, my number one quote, is come out of the fog, young man. And remember, you don't have to be a complete fool in order to succeed. Play the game, but don't believe in it. Play the game, but play it your way. Learn how it operates, and then learn how you operate. Be your own father, young man. And this was the wonderful scene where he's on the bus with the gentleman, right? And so the older guys are like giving him the rap about how he can succeed and how he's going to be okay in New York. Then he says, and remember, the world is possibility only if you'll discover it. Now see, that goes to what all our folks have said about that hopeful vision. So I've spoken too much already. This has been a great talk. So I hope we can hear some more reactions from the crowd.
Even